Welcome back to Autism, A New Perspective, the podcast show where we help you understand what's going on in the mind of your child. And we always encourage you that growth for your child is possible. I'm Kat Lee, and in this week's podcast, Dr. Sheely asked me how I got into RDI. Let's listen in.
When we first met, which was, I think, at a training Steve did in either Dallas or Fort Worth, Texas, you already had the diagnosis, and you had been thinking about the trajectory you wanted for you and your husband and your son. And I'm not sure your daughter was born. I think she was. Anyway, but what I was always curious about was how you made that switch from your early goals for yourself to being in the field of autism. Because were you head of an organization in Dallas or Fort Worth at the time?
Yes, I was actually at that time president. When you all came, I was president of FEET North Texas, the parent group that we had started, as so many had in the country, to help parents. And our main focus at that time was behavior analytic work, because parents in Dallas Fort Worth, there were just no services for anything. I mean, that's not hyperbolic. And so they didn't know what to do. They were part of this big increase in diagnosis. And it wasn't really as much like we're just giving the diagnosis more. We were seeing really highly impacted children. We didn't know why. When we first had a diagnosis, we thought, oh, it's 1 in 10,000. Wow, that's so unusual. But then there was somebody a few blocks over, somebody a couple of miles away. We all just started finding each other. So that's what I was doing at the time, just trying to help parents, and we all kind of got together to try to help other parents.
And that's continued. But what I suspect about your early career, graduation from college, and what you were thinking of doing wasn't about chairing parent groups.
So I love music, and by about 19, all I wanted to do was either news or a DJ on the radio, and so I pursued that at college with the campus radio station. End up running the station. That's how I would get up. I'd get up. This is motivation for a college student. I'd get up at 6 a.m, go turn the station on. It was a real passion. And I, as soon as I could not take classes and do internships, I did. I think one year, I had 2 internships and a job. I just loved it. I still love it.
Could you talk for a minute, Catherine, about how your life shifted when your son was given the diagnosis of autism?
Well, as I know I've said before, the way the information is given is really significant to parents. So in our case, and I think unfortunately even still today, it was, kind of like an end at the ripe old age of 2 years old. The doctor, who was kind, but was like, there's really nothing you can do. You need to pay attention to your daughter, who is a little bit older. And, there's some speech therapy, things like that, but there's really nothing that you can do. And I remember saying to him, that can't be true. Like, that can't be true. And he's like, well, that is. And I'm sure he was thinking, well-meaning, but thinking she's just going to have to learn to accept this. So, that we didn't accept that. And for one reason or another, I don't know why, but we just decided to keep parenting him the way we had, because it had been going really well. He was just more distressed. He was pretty laid back as a baby, and we had a lot of fun with him. And so we thought, well, we're going to keep doing what we were doing, but we're going to try to figure out how to teach him, because what he had lost was his some of his speech and connection with us. He was dysregulated more. So that's how it shifted. And then eventually we talked to other parents and we decided to start an ABA program in our home, the two of us, and I started learning what I could and started teaching him, and that's kind of was the big shift for us.
And at that time, having having had this wonderful career that was getting going and having had the college experience, did you feel that that was over for you, or did you have in the back of your mind, maybe I'll get back to it? What was your feeling about your own career?
At that time I was so, I don't know if overwhelmed's the right word or focused or both of what was going to happen to our family, what was going to happen to our daughter, what was going to happen to Brian and I in our relationship, what was going to happen with my mother who lived, and then of course what was going to happen to my sweet son. Uh, it kind of shifted for me, and I got, as my mother said, I got almost as she put it, tunnel. Like, we, I like the way I've heard people talk about it. It's a saving, like you're trying to save your child. So when that gets in place, if ever anybody's experienced that, you know that other things tend to move to the back. But I never stopped loving that industry. I still do. And I think that, that's always been there. I used to tell my husband when I drive by a station, I think of just running in and asking him if I could read the news. So I've never, whatever life brings to you, you learn from your experiences and you can bring that into other areas. And that's what I wonderful about what you and Dr. Gutstein have allowed me to do, which is uh, these podcasts and interviews over the years.
It's been fabulous. And as I said, you really are, we wouldn't use the word poster child, but you are the face in many, many areas of RDI. Tell me about the shift that you went through from uh, being being a behavior analyst to becoming actually an RDI consultant. I mean, that's a pretty big leap because could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, it's really a beautiful story. I think anyway, at least I think it's a beautiful story for us. So Brian and I love to be very involved with our children, and he would come home after work, no matter how it was, and throw his tie off and do something with both of them or one of them or whatever. And we just wanted to know what we wanted to know how to guide our child who had some very pretty severe vulnerabilities, particularly in what he understood in terms of communication and then what he could put out. And so we we went through training, that therapists go through to learn how to teach him. So the thing was, and I'm always careful with this because I know that everybody who did mentor and help us was well-meaning in those early days. They really were used to training therapists, people who were going to go into this field, not to training parents at the level that we felt like we needed to be trained in order to really know what was going on inside his brain and to be able to teach him. And while we have always had, since that time, great people with him, we felt like they could teach him all they could, but if we weren't involved in that and didn't know what was going on, we could see that we would further and further behind in understanding vulnerabilities. So, kind of moving forward, uh, I'm a mom, and I could ask, I think, pretty challenging questions. I laugh at that. I think back to the day when I would just pop out in meetings with our therapist there and our consultant, and I would just ask these questions, and he would just look at me like, how am I going to answer this lady's questions? And um, again, he really tried, but I know I was irritating sometimes because as moms and dads, we ask different questions. Like, if we have to do this, what does that mean for his learning in the future? Because we're just in a different place. And so uh, when, after many years, and he was around, I think 11, when I had a wonderful consultant by that time who had gone down and heard you and Dr. Gutstein speak on RDI. She was a BCBA, and she had known me for several years then, and she said, "You need to go down to Houston. You need to hear them speak." And I'm telling you, and she was not a person who would say, if she was saying that, I knew it was true. So actually, you all ended up coming up to Dallas, and she was right. I did need to hear you speak, and I did need to hear Dr. Gutstein. And for me, as they say, long story made long, um, here was this training designed for parents on how to guide their children. And that part of it really attracted me to become a consultant and to work with parents to help them learn that, because and you and Dr. Gutstein showed me that that required a special design, keeping parents in mind and that guiding relationship. And then, of course, there were the wonderful goals for the children as well.
One of the things that I love about what you just said was you were always asking the questions, and you are still always asking the questions.
And thanks for joining us for Autism, A New Perspective, the podcast show where we help you understand what is going on in the mind of your child. And we encourage you that growth for your child is possible. I'm Kat Lee. See you next time.